Hi guys, welcome back to Chess do Matthew. So on this video, we will tackle about the Ruy Lopez defense with the classical defense of bishop to c5. So the set opening start with the moves of e4, e5, and after knight f3, intending to capture this pawn, and knight c6, defending the pawn with the knight, and again, the bishop b5, the Ruy Lopez opening that intends to capture this defender of the e5 pawn. But here the black will simply play a solid move of bishop to c5 on his move 3. And this is now the classical defense. So this video is all about on how to beat this variation of the Ruy Lopez defense. So the white here will simply play c3 as our antidote against this bishop to c5. And if the black here plays knight to f6, we will simply here castle on the king side to put our king first into safety without worrying that this pawn will be captured by this knight. But we have simple queen to e2, again attacking the knight and later on the pawn. So after king side castling, the black here may castle on the king side because he has nothing to gain about after capturing this pawn, and it only put his knight to move twice in the opening. So here we will simply now play d4 with our c3. We can actually have a tempo attack against this bishop and pawn. And for example, after e takes d4, c takes d4, again this bishop is actually been attacked by the pawn and it should be retreat to a safe square. So after bishop to b6, we have now again another tempo move up e5, attacking this knight with the pawn. And for example, after knight to d5, here we will simply retreat our bishop to d3. The idea here is, for example, after d6, we have bishop takes h7 check. And again, this bishop is actually undefended, but after king takes h7, we have knight g5 check. And this knight cannot be captured by the queen because it was actually defended with the bishop on c1. So after king to g6, we have queen to d3 check, again exploiting that the king is actually out of his comfort zone. And for example, after bishop to f5, covering the check, but we have a simple move of playing queen to g3. The idea here is, for example, after this knight will be moved to this file, then there will be a check. And for example, if this knight will be moved to this e6, then it can give a discover check and an attack to the queen and rook simultaneously. So after queen to d7, saving his queen to a safe square against the idea of the knight on e6, but still there is knight to c6 with a discover check of the queen. And again, this knight controls now the g7, so any retreat of the king to h7 will leads to a mate. So after knight e6 check, the only defense that left for the black is to cover. But after queen takes g4 check, king h7, the only move, and queen takes g7 checkmate. So in just 16 moves, the white here wins through checkmate against the classical defense variation of the Ruy Lopez for black. So again, just a recap: after e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop to b5, and bishop to c5, the classical defense variation of the Ruy Lopez, but we have a simple c3. This is now our antidote variation against this bishop c5 of black. And again, if the black here plays another move instead of playing knight c6, for example after a6, but again we will simply retreat our bishop to safe square, and after knight f6, king side castling, and again the same idea. After the knight here will grab that pawn because there is queen to e2, and after king side castling, again we have a tempo move of d4. The idea here is, for example, after a takes d4, c takes d4, bishop b6, again the position is still the same from the latter moves after e5, with just an insertion of e6 and bishop to a4. And after e5, attacking the knight. And if the knight here plays to knight to d5, but again we have bishop to c2. And with the same idea after d6, because there is bishop takes h7 check, and after king takes h7, again knight g5 check, king g6, and queen d3 with a check again on the board. And again, the black here cannot actually go for this move because, for example, after the black here put his king to h5, but there is queen check, and after king to g4, again there is a mate in 1 after h3. So going back, for example, after queen to d3 with the check, the same manner after bishop f5 covering the check, but we have queen g3 again, the same position, and after queen d7, still knight e6, give a check to the king, and with the threat to mate, and same manner after bishop g4, queen takes g4, king h7, queen takes h7, checkmate in just 17 moves. So that's all. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please don't forget to subscribe.